Deepwoken and Cursed Gear, the two most recent projects from Monad Studios. In today's video, I'll be going over both of them and comparing them so you guys can see what's to expect from Cursed Gear's upcoming release, and also so you guys can know more about the game before then and compare it to Deepwoken, since most of you have played Deepwoken. Anyway, make sure to subscribe, since 0% of the people watching this video right now are actually subscribed. I have 0 subscribers, I know, crazy. Also, new live channel video tomorrow, so make sure to go watch that, and let's get straight into it. Alright, so first of all, I actually got to talk with Reaconteur pretty recently about Cursed Gear, which is surprising because he is literally the only game owner to not acknowledge me until recently, but I guess if I'm testing Cursed Gear, it's kind of more inevitable. Anyway, he feels like Cursed Gear is actually in a better spot content-wise than Deepwoken was upon release, and although I didn't think about it, he actually might be a little bit right, which I'll explain in a second. Despite the smaller maps, he thinks the team working on Cursed Gear did a better job with the progression and content in the game than they did with Deepwoken upon release. Now, I know a lot of the new gens in the comments section are gonna act like they know what I'm talking about, because for some reason so many people who've been playing since verse 2 like talking about verse 1, but Deepwoken on release was actually pretty bare. We didn't even have Trial of 1, the progression for single builds took like 5 hours of straight gameplay. We didn't really have endgame content unless you wanted to farm Duke or Ferryman at power 60 back then for an HP kit, which was like 1100 health. Essentially, the only thing carrying the game was the mystery and the exploration. If the game weren't new, nobody would have been playing it back then the way people play it now. And yeah, the game goes through dry spells even now, and then the player count will drop, but I think that if Deepwoken weren't new, nobody would have been playing it back then. But that's just because everyone always thought the game had more than what we were seeing, but it was actually a pretty thin veil. Another thing Reaconteur said was that he wanted bells in Deepwoken to kind of feel like how domains are explained to be in actual Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a funny but accurate analogy. He wanted bells to be the apex of progression, rewarding to get but difficult to obtain, and very strong. However, this kind of aspect fell flat when the bell requirements got leaked by testers a week after release, and also the bells just kind of weren't rare enough to make super strong like he initially wanted to, and with community bitching, he and the devs kind of just made them easier to get over time, so he feels like bells fell flat in that regard. Along with that, Deepwoken lacks certain major progression goals to make you feel like you've made large steps of progress over time. Rogue Lineage, for example, had base, super, and ultra classes, and then secondary stuff like artifacts, soul and swords, and then the uber classes and edicts if you went to K. Very clearly outlined jumps in strength that feel rewarding, but any given power level in Deepwoken doesn't really feel like a big jump from any other, and the bells are actually pretty underwhelming strength-wise. Cursed Gear both has smaller goals to work for, like your technique. Cursed Gear both has smaller goals to work for with the grade system and leveling, and then the larger goals to work for like Cursed Techniques, Reverse Cursed Technique, and Domain Expansion, which in combination are supposed to be slow sustained progression, but then also your larger jumps in power and major progression. So it's kind of like a blend between Rogue Lineage and Deepwoken's progression, where in Rogue Lineage it's pretty much all just straight jumps. There's no like slow progression that you work towards. It's really just you go from a class to the next stage of a class, but it's also between Deepwoken's freeform progression where you slowly level up it with your stats and increase them. So Reaconteur himself is actually happy with how it's coming out, at least on the technical side of things. Funnily enough, he actually agreed with me that the Norikura map, it's for the school that I was talking about in the last video, was ugly, so that'll probably be getting reworked. Also, the progression is much more linear than in Deepwoken, which I haven't really mentioned. Deepwoken had completely free, non-mission based progression, but Cursed Gear doesn't, because, I mean, I guess Reaconteur felt like, oh, when you have too much freedom in progression, everyone kind of just ends up doing the same thing every time anyway, so he might as well make it more linear and then be able to guide progression better in a way that would make it more satisfying to play with, you know, big jumps in progression like your grades and your Cursed Technique and all that stuff. As far as Cursed Gear progression goes, well, other than the large parts of it, you also have to collect a currency called time in Cursed Gear, which you get for scrapping items and completing your missions and extracting. With time, you can use it to train stat points, leveling you up and increasing your 6 base stats, which are all linked to certain attributes like speed, strength, cursed energy stores, cursed energy output, which can disrupt cursed techniques, durability, etc. You get it, right? Along with that, unlike Deepwoken, movesets are done per class more similarly to Rogue Lineage. Deepwoken doesn't have classes you can basically make, like literally anything in that game, but in Cursed Gear, you choose a class at the start, and you have a passive and active ability set, which every class has switchable alternative abilities that you can mix and match as you please, giving you around 30 different capable class movesets per class, and that's not counting the 90-ish cursed techniques that exist in the game. Now to actual comparisons outside of progression, starting with PvE. The Cursed Gear PvE pales pales in comparison to most Deepwoken PvE for the most part, and it's because this is not a PvE game. And before someone says, but Deepwoken isn't a PvE game, yes it is. Deepwoken has always been more about lore, world building, and PvE than PvP. It's just easier to make content for PvP players who encompass most people playing the game, because PvE is harder to make original content for, and therefore there is less of it. But the biggest updates in Deepwoken history have all been PvE focused. In the same way Rogue Lineage didn't really have PvE, neither does this game, honestly. It's better than Rogue Lineage, but it's not that great. It's all just a vessel to progress so you can engage in the PvP sooner, which is already most of the mission progression since invasions are actually really prominent. But yes, this game is not for you PvE only grinders. I'd say still check it out, since if you don't like Deepwoken's PvP, this is pretty far from it, so I'd say to still give it a chance. And I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, but the game's combat is way too technical. What the fuck are we talking about with that complaint? Okay, which I'll talk about the PvP now, right? But with that being said, the PvP is not more technical than Deepwoken's and Cursed Gear. I've heard people say, oh, there's too many inputs, there's too much stuff to memorize. No, there isn't. There is so much more tech and stuff to memorize in like Deepwoken PvP than there is in Cursed Gear PvP, okay? Like, I don't even know where this argument started. Like, can anyone tell me where that argument started? Like, where people started thinking, oh, this game is so much more technically advanced than Deepwoken, it's gonna be so hard to play in the PvP. It's not. It really isn't. It's easier than Deepwoken PvP because you don't need to memorize so much shit, and there's not, like, it doesn't even make it. It's just such a nonsense argument, right? Anyway, the PvP is somewhere in the middle of Rogue Lineage and Deepwoken, which I've said multiple times, but it is still very different from both. In Deepwoken, there are no real true combos, although there are a lot of ways to string 50-50s through combos due to shaky block. Cursed Gear does not have shaky block. In fact, Cursed Gear isn't even really parry based. There is parrying, yeah, and there is benefit in doing so, but you really don't need to if you don't want to. You can block like usual and just like wait your turn through their kit, right? And you can take advantage of people who don't land their cursed energy flashes or people who use their entire kit on you. And yes, this game does have true combos, but it's not like other games where the entirety of the combat is true stun and whoever lands the first hit just gets to use their entire kit on you. The game has specific moves that can chain into other specific moves, giving people the option of using maybe 2, maybe at most like 3 moves in a string, or they can conserve stamina and cursed energy if they're exhausted from mission status effects by not using these larger combo strings, which would then exhaust them. Another point I've been hearing is people saying, oh, but the game, people use macros. There's not really macro issues. Like, some people have been saying that there are, but that's genuinely just a skill issue if you can't press 2 buttons or remember the M1, M2 combos for using certain moves. Macros really don't give you any real advantage past like your first 10 minutes playing the game, because they're not that hard to input for things like your cursed energy flashes or your dashes. They're kind of just used by people who suck and have no muscle memory capabilities. With that being said, I believe the devs might be cracking down on macros and just banning people who distribute them anyway because it's lame, which, good, they should have done that for Rogue Lineage. Now, as far as lore, world building, aesthetics, just all the miscellaneous stuff goes, you know how that stuff is, right? I don't really think there is much, if any, lore in Cursed Gear. I haven't really been able to find any or pick up on anything, and the inconsistencies in map settings make it really confusing, because one minute you're in modern day Shibuya, and the next you're in post-apocalyptic futuristic desert nuclear wasteland, and none of that is ever explained. You're kind of just fighting robots and cursed spirits, and that's it. To my knowledge, this game has even less apparent lore than Rogue Lineage, and that game had so many unanswered questions to this very day. The game has no questions because it gives you no answers. I have not found a single bit of lore here, and since I don't know anything about Nier Automata, I might be missing even more. As far as map aesthetics go, I do prefer Deepwoken. It's a lot more cohesive and consistent, with different areas having their own themings without it being jarring. Like, yeah, the Hivekin are high tech. I almost said hive tech, but they're themed around nature and trees, and all their stuff looks like it. Versus me walking 5 minutes out of Shibuya and finding ruined California and the Golden Gate Bridge. You get what I mean? It's just a bit confusing without any explanation. Imagine if Deepwoken's depths were in Deepwoken's World of Lumen, just in the middle of everything for no reason. That's kind of what it feels like at times, without any explanation, because we don't know what's going on in the world of Cursed Gear. It really doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I'm sure Reaconteur actually wouldn't like the concept of this video, because, funny thing, but he doesn't like when people say he's killing Deepwoken for this game, which is funny because it's 2 different dev teams. Anyway, I just want to make sure that's, I just want to make this video talk a bit more about Cursed Gear, since, the release is in like, maybe today, actually. The release is anywhere from today, the day you guys are watching this video, to like the next few days, because the game goes into maintenance today. Anyway, I just want to make sure you guys liked the video, right? Hope you guys enjoyed. Shout out to YouTube members of Tier 2 or higher: Green, Philip, Highcard, Delusional Mo, Elstern, Fun Guns, Broccoli, IXKMB, Goobka, Akio Sugikuni, Carlia the Witch, and Drizzy Drake Fan. Hope you all enjoyed. And also, I almost forgot burger, but I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, and goodbye.